Alright, YouTube, it's time for Occult Literature video number 40, The Three Treatises of Alchemy by Isaac Hollandus. Now, as always, link in the description to this work on Amazon, my edition of it, which I've released. I also illustrated this one, kind of sparingly, but I did illustrate it. So it looks, those look pretty decent, honestly. I was pretty happy with the way they turned out. Second link to my books blog where this and many other works are available. Not just alchemy, we're talking grimoires, folk magic, things I've written, things I've edited, a little bit of everything for everybody. Isaac Hollandus dispensed with some of the pleasantries of veiling his work here that you find so commonly associated with alchemy. Most often you get these weird references, they're metaphors like the green dragon, the red lion, the red oil, the stone of the philosophers, these terms that aren't entirely made clear. Hollandus chose generally not to do that, also with many alchemical works. You get a lot of sort of a proverb-style material, like in the Rosary, the philosophers. Mostly it's talking about mating and the king and queen, coming together, and then they die, and then they putrefy, and then they ascend, and it's literally just talking. It's just a metaphor for the overall chemical concepts which they're performing within these works. Hollandus, though, is putting it in fairly straightforward terms, talking about specific compounds, specific materials and tools, and does a fairly good job of doing so. Now, this tract revolves partially around creating the stone, and then partially creating elixir, and then a secondary elixir called Elixirs, which is sort of an easier thing to create than elixir. It takes less time, it takes less expense, but it's also inferior in its medicinal capabilities. Now, I'll point out this. Sometimes when you get a reference with an alchemy, you have to look at chemical processes and try to find what they're talking about. For instance, foliated earth. The process is simply the drenching of soil. It's simply the humidification of soil to cause nitrates to be leached up out of it, causing a little sheen on the surface. If you've ever had a potted plant, you keep watering it over time, the soil gets older, you get this white crusty stuff on the surface, especially if it had fertilizer in it or if you added fertilizer to it. It's nitrate compounds, literally crystallizing on the surface of the soil. That's what's being spoken of. It was considered medicinal at the time. It was considered useful once purified in alchemy. It's also saltpeter. It's a part of the recipe for gunpowder. I know they used to pour urine through straw, or they used to take a vat of urine and dip things into it to collect the crystals and do various things like that as well to collect it, and then they would filter it through a screen, and then they'd distill it and so forth, and they'd try to recrystallize this material to make it as pure as possible, so they can make blasting powder essentially, or what to make their fireworks. But Hollandus is one of the better alchemical authors. This is a 31-page text. It's not that long. It's fairly short. But it contains a great deal of info. If you're interested, especially in the elixir of the philosophers, this is probably one of the better texts. If you're thinking more about the stone of the philosophers or the process of alchemy in creating gold or silver, you're not going to as much desire this text. It's really more about the elixir, not necessarily even really the medicinal side. The transmutational side of elixir is just as important. It's spoken of in other works as well. I believe that Basil Valentine covers it. I can't remember the other author. I think it was Elixirs also covers the topic. Some of these individuals sort of forsake that, or they cast a frown over the very idea of creating or transmuting things. They talk more about vapor and philosophy and the four humors and things of that nature. Some of these tracts are more medicinal. This one is more hands-on and utilitarian as far as actually crafting these things. Now, for legal purposes, obviously, I don't recommend eating foliated earth, nitrates. I don't recommend cooking with arsenic or antimony or any of the things that you have to do in order to practice alchemy, according to many of these texts. But it's still a fascinating look at the period of time. So again, as before, link in the description to where you can purchase my edition of this work, second link to my books blog. That's about all.